Greetings, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of Chapter and Curse. This is the series where we go through and read this book, the first book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson, called Gardens of the Moon. Last week we did a bit of an introduction, but just a reminder, my name is Rob and I am the return reader, and I'm here with Adil, with Gareth, and with Doc Kevlar, aka Alistair, and they're reading the book for the first time, and we're going through each chapter and we're discussing it as we go from those different perspectives. We did mention last time, we gave a warning that there would be some strong language. That may occur again, so consider this a second warning. Also, just a note, I think Adil mentioned
there won't be a third warning.
There will be no further warning. Just to note that there will be spoilers insofar as it goes up to chapter 2 in this particular episode of Gardens of the Moon. But no further than that. I'll try and avoid spoiling anything with the existing knowledge, and I'll just try to limit myself to contextual conversation and pointing out the things. I've already realized that a lot of what I'm going to be looking at and doing is looking at things and thinking, oh God, how could I have missed that? And I've read it twice. But hopefully not too much of that. But I think we should also mention a thank you to all the people who've commented on the video. It's been very pleasing and very surprising. Thank you to all of you who's getting involved. We do appreciate it. And we really enjoy dealing with comments. So if you do have comments, and some of the comments were from people who picking up the book and reading along, please by all means do so. We do value input, and judging by last month's episode, or episode 2 weeks ago, we will engage with anything you have to say. But if you do drop comments, please just be advised that for 3 of these guys, this is a first-time read. So don't go and, start with, do you know what happens in the series? Wait till you get to book 6. And I do realize it is hard not to drop spoilers, because even something as innocuous as, oh, so-and-so is my favorite character, implies a lot and gives away a lot,
Yeah,
it's difficult.
You're right. It's been so good reading those comments, and it makes you excited, because the comments from the people who've read the series, it's almost like, when you've seen a really good movie with an awesome twist and you just want someone else to see it so you can talk about it. There's definitely that excitement for, I get that they're excited for a new reader to sort of be coming across the stuff for the first time. It's pretty cool.
And to be fair, I think just looking at generally groups involving the Malazan stuff, you get a lot of people who are excited that you're reading it. And you don't seem to get that many toxic type comments as you do on other groups, or on other channels. So let's hope it stays that way, because it's been very positive. But anyway, turning to chapter 2, guys. So this is the previous chapters. We were on the Malazan mainland and on Malaz Island, and now we go to the sort of cutting edge of the Malazan imperial advance on the continent of Genebacus. I'm assuming that's a correct pronunciation. And we immediately go into the aftermath of the battle that ends what appears to be a long siege of the city of Pale. And we have a chapter that's almost exclusively told through the point of view of a new character called Tattersail. And once again, it starts in media res with the immediate aftermath of the battle. And then we have a sort of time jumping that goes on in this chapter. But perhaps it's certainly from last episode, it seems the best way is just to ask you guys straight away, what is your impression in particular of this chapter, this point of view, and what is quite a long, dense chapter?
Al, you want to go?
Sure, why not? Chapter
Lasers 2. And fireballs.
Yeah. Chapter 2. I enjoyed it. I think it calmed down a bit from the first chapter. I thought there was a bit more of a story as I spoke last time about story beats, it felt a bit more comfortable to the eye this time. I wasn't as thrown, and I was really blown away by the scope of it. I thought, with that little meeting in the beginning with all the wizards, sorcerers, etc., I thought that was cool because you never really. It's always usually like kings and henchmen or knights and stuff, but to have X amount of, wizards and not just mediocre ones. They're not just hedge wizards. These dudes are like the real deal. All sort of sniping each other in the back and passing comments, and there's like there's massive like sort of, unspoken opponents and everything else going on amongst them. So yeah, I enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed the battle. I just thought that was pretty hardcore. It was almost like Magic 1994. It's like all these dudes just casting these mad spells and floating cities that are evolving. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I thought it was really, really good.
I really like that. I agreed on that tension. The meeting in the tent, which is quite early in the chapter, and it did feel, as you say, like there was a lot of undercurrent and a lot of tension, things that were just not said that you could feel in the room. And I'm not sure. I can't get my finger on it, like as to exactly how he did that, but the way that they kind of conversed was really well captured. And even though to the point you made, that we're in Tattersail's head, it didn't feel like you were just looking at it from one person. It felt like it was sort of rotating around.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have to agree with Elle. I think that just the scale and the spectacle of that battle and that giant, moon spawn, hey? That thing like that where they say it's been rotating for 7 years and it suddenly had stopped, and I found the whole chapter like pretty cinematic. Just the way it was described, that battle, he really does paint the picture for you. But yeah, no, I enjoyed the chapter a lot, and it's interesting that it's so like purely magic focused, which was pretty cool. I think gave a bit more, like for me at least, a little bit more insight into sort of maybe what the Warrens could potentially be and that sort of thing. But yeah, and also the characters were great. You meet like a lot of cool new characters. Tattersail is cool. I like
cool,
her. Yeah, and then like Hairlock.
Yeah, Hairlock's the guy who starts the chapter sawn in half, basically.
Yeah.
What a flipping opener!
What a Monday. Yeah.
Bottom half of his body is missing.
Yeah.
I had to actually read that the first time I read it. I read that a few times because I couldn't kind of believe that had just been said as a matter of factly as it had. Like his entrails are like spilling out onto the ground, and he's missing the bottom half of his body, and he's still being a wise ass.
It's like nothing kills the arrogance in these characters. No matter how bad your day is, they're still going to be cheeky.
Tis but a scratch.
But as you say, it does give you an insight into this Malazan military and how they use mages, because Tattersail is described as in charge of the mage Cadre. Please tell me how you pronounce that word.
Well, in South Africa, we'd say cadre.
Yes, but is that a correct pronunciation?
I would say cadre. The guy on the audiobook says cadre.
I've heard it said cader. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, really? Now we've got three pronunciations.
Well, I'm going to go with cadre because we're South African.
Yes, cadre.
And we're world champions, just by the way.
Back to back.
Double world champions. Hashtag stronger forever. Stronger together. Damn it.
We'll edit it out. It's fine.
So, and she's in charge of the mage cadre of the Second Army, but that only consists of 2 other mages, it seems.
And that's what Callet and Hairlock. Yeah, okay.
Or 1.5 mages.
I think what I liked about it as well was when they actually get to the battlefield and they're all strung out on like various points, like or rocks or cliffs or whatever, overlooking this sort of valley. And then he talks about legions, which I thought was cool, like all these legions waiting for the go-ahead to go and attack. Because normally it's like, there's an army or a squad or a platoon, but no, this is legions. This is like hundreds of thousands of men. and women about to, barrel down these hills and go and attack whatever comes out of this floating rock. Yeah, no, it was cool. I really enjoyed it.
There's a line which one of the soldiers says to her. I think it's in the build up to the battle when you flash back to pre-battle. He says, "Always an even trade, sorcerers," referring to the relationship between the troops and the wizards, which is something that gets repeated, but it's quite an interesting thing. Like wizards are part of battle plans for them. They very much part of what they do. But as you say, in that's opening scene is we have Hairlock, sawn in half, and then we have the bridge burners, these
Whiskey
soldiers.
Jack.
Whiskey Jack, yeah.
Whiskey Jack, cool
Great
name.
name.
Quick,
So
and
cool.
there's a quick Ben.
Whiskey Jack, Quick Ben, Kalam,
Sorry.
and Sorry are the. And we know who Sorry is.
Yeah, well, I do now. After you
Well,
guys told me.
thanks to this channel, you do now.
Yeah, exactly. If it wasn't for this, I'd be lost still.
But did anyone pick up the description of Whiskey Jack? He's described as having grey eyes, and he's the only character whose eyes have been described in the novel up until now, except for one other who's described as having grey eyes.
Who was described as having grey eyes?
The gentleman in the prologue who's
Yes, who's talking to Perrin.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Good God.
Okay, I did miss that.
Yeah, I also I had no idea. Okay, so that's Whiskey Jack talking to him at the beginning.
Yep, it is. And Whiskey Jack in the beginning is a commander in the prologue.
Oh, yes, of course.
And he has an interaction with
the Empress.
With the Empress.
What was her name then?
Surly.
Surly.
Yeah.
They have as part of that prologue, they chat a bit or have a bit of a.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
But in this chapter, he's a sergeant.
He's
And
been obviously busted down.
It's years later, yeah. And then the wizard who's called Quickben, and the hulking bear assassin called Kalam, and Sorry, who's they seem to all be a little bit scared of.
Yeah, even the maid, she picks up there's something wrong with her.
It's interesting. Before I realized it was Sorry, and these sort of the bridge burners came to over the hill, I kind of assumed that maybe they were going to do a spell to, I don't know, put Hairlock's spirit into this poor girl's body or something like that. I felt like that was being sort of like hinted at until you realize that it's her.
Yes, but they ultimately do a spell and put his body into a creepy wooden marionette.
Pinocchio.
Yeah.
I must be honest though, that kind of did. Yeah, that did kind of pull me out of the story a bit when she goes back to the tent and there's the wrapped up.
And he's like, "Come on,
and that I was like,
play the cards."
Yeah, really? Okay. Yeah, that did. I thought, I mean, if you've got all that power, you can lie in the morning, spend your morning lying chops in half, talking shit to people. Could you not like muster up something slightly better, than?
But I get the sense that it's not Hairlock who casts the spell; it's Quick.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's obviously, and they found that thing They found something in underground, didn't they?
I don't know about underground, because the information you get is that while this battle has been going on, the bridge burners, as a unit, have been in tunnels under the city, and these tunnels have now collapsed during this magical chaos that's going on, and most of them are being killed by it.
So just in terms of like what's actually happening politically, so Pale is a city that was anti the Malazan Empire, or
just standing in its way. I mean, that's there's some questions to be asked here, because I mean, we're talking about rampant imperial expansionism. That they talk about the opening chapter. I think it's the prologue, or one of the little epitaph talks about there were two free cities. One had all these defenses, the other had none, and the one with the defenses fell first, suggesting there's only one further free city left on this continent.
Okay, interesting.
So we're it's interesting because the way the story is told is almost from a Malazan point of view, but one doesn't, or certainly I didn't stop and ask, like, who the goodies in this story?
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone's.
Yeah, it's not clear yet.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's going to raise the flag and be victorious. It's just probably all going to end in tears.
So we start off with that, and it's interesting that opening scene. It seems to me is told quite interestingly because it's kind of the way in which you recall trauma. Like you have this traumatic event, which is the battle where everybody dies, including her lover, and then she's kind of recalling those events, kind of drawing back on the memory of how the whole thing came to being. So you get the flashback to when they are being called. She and Callot are called to go to this meeting, and we meet Dujek One Arm, who's the commander in chief of this second army. And they have this meeting and there's this Taishran, who's like the imperial high mage who's come to take command effectively of the attack. And you get a sense that none of the other mages like him at all.
Yeah.
And also, as you said, Gareth, there's this kind of political undertone to the whole thing. Like who's representing who, and who's loyal to who.
I mean, from what I've read, and obviously through Tattersail's thoughts, he's up to no good. He's clearly up to something other than, because he lets the one mage die. Was it her lover?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he could have protected him, but he didn't. Was it the Night King or something?
Yeah, there's two other. So Taishran arrives and he tells them, well, they're gonna attack immediately, essentially.
Yeah.
The siege is going to be over, and they're going to attack Moonspawn. And he's brought two other mages with him. One is called Beladan, and the other is called Nightchill. Oh, three, and then another one called Arcaronus. And so these are like high mages, basically. And somebody notes when he talks about them that they're all haven't been active for a long time. I think the implication of that is they're all people who worked for the old emperor.
Okay.
So there's this sort of this kind of mistrust that's going on the whole time.
Yeah, and they also allude quite heavily to that Dujek One Arm being the old emperor's like next in line.
Yeah.
So there's obviously going to be some mistrust there. Is he still is he really loyal to Lysine, or
What is your guys' impression of that character, Dujek One Arm? I felt almost immediately liked him just reading it.
Yeah. Even before we met him, I think there was a mention of him earlier, and I was like, okay, this guy's cool.
yeah, he's a sort of like no nonsense kind of military guy, but a bit of a sense of humor as well.
Yeah, and I can't understand or imagine what the logistics of being a military man with one arm must be, but he seems to be making it work.
Yeah, he makes jokes about the barber that has always shaves him badly.
Yeah.
And he's quipping with one of them. I think it's Callot who's asking for a transfer as soon as he hears what they're up against.
Oh yeah.
And he says something like paperwork's hell when you've only got one arm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So now the Moonspawn, was that the floating citadel or fortress?
Yeah. It's a basic, as I envisage it, it's like a floating huge bit of rock that's just floating above the city. And
but now, is that where the enemy were? They were.
Yeah. They talk about. And perhaps it's worth talking about. They talk about the sorceress Tiste Andi. I say Tiste. Not how I would have pronounced it, Tiste, but I know that's how the author pronounces it. The Tiste Andi they talk about the legions of sorceress Tiste Andi who were in Moonspawn but have left to go and fight the Malazans on another front. And the Tiste Andi are, I think it's worth noting, are one of the sort of races in this universe. Or they are. I mean, I don't want to be prescriptive, but they're kind of like the elves.
Cave trolls.
Like suffering from terrible sense of ennui.
Yeah. Oh my God, my parents just don't understand me.
And they are. I mean, it's clear that because you're told that there's another fight going on this continent, featuring somebody called Caladan Brood, who's a warlord, that he's being assisted by mercenaries called the Crimson Guard, and that they're giving the Malazan armies a bit of a hiding somewhere else on the continent. So it's clearly all these forces that have arrayed against this empire, including Moonspawn, and then you get this attack. And there's a sense when Tashrin arrives and he says, well, they've kind of worked out that there's only one person left in this fortress. And and then when they eventually work out who it is, everyone craps themselves.
And just in terms of the logistics of that floating fortress, I mean, it sounds a bit like a Death Star kind of vibe, right? And so it moves around, right? I mean, it doesn't just stick around in that one space. So it could have been elsewhere, but it was sticking around there for the whole time of this
absolutely
siege.
For the whole siege, yeah.
But in that time, it doesn't seem like it had done anything in the 3 years or whatever that it was sitting there.
Yeah, they don't say, but it doesn't seem like it did. It seemed it was just basically there as a kind of defense, and that in and of itself was enough to keep the army out of the city. And then you have this massive magical attack that launched by starting with Tashrin, and then all the mages just letting rip, and then they just get absolutely hammered.
Quick question: so, is Malazan landlocked? No.
What do you mean, Malazan?
Well, where they're fighting now?
The city of Pale, yes, it is.
And so now, because they refer to the soldiers as Marines, which means obviously they have boats.
Yeah, there is a.
So is the Malazan Empire?
I don't know if you can see there, but Pale
is
kind of halfway down in the middle. But this whole continent of Genebakis is quite thin and long, and so they would have come by sea to get here.
So they've landed on the east coast then, or the west coast?
I suspect they've landed on the west coast, but I'm not sure because my thing's backwards, so I'm looking at the whole thing in reverse.
There's nothing that I've read so far that leads me to believe that they're a massive naval force.
No, I think.
But apart from the fact that all the soldiers they're never. I mean, obviously you get ranks like sergeant and commander and stuff like that, but then it specifically points out the words Marine.
Yeah.
Several times throughout the story, and that kind of didn't throw me. I just thought, oh, okay. So there's obviously again now there's more to this army than meets the eye.
Yeah,
I think. Why would you be so far from your boats using Marines?
You'll get into that. You'll get into the various armies and what they're doing in various places.
Because I came away with it like very much like the Civil War, American Civil War, because they're obviously the 5th and the 6th and all these different armies under command of someone else, or the names of these different commanders. But especially the part where she goes, I think it's in chapter 2, where she goes up to the camp at the end of the battle when the day has been won, and she's just overwhelmed by the noise, the screams, the pain, and all that. And she walks past that big pile of limbs that have been obviously hacksawed off, and that was just, to me, that was very reminiscent of American Civil War.
I don't think it pulls any punches as to, it doesn't glorify warfare. In fact, it talks about, talking about the various races of this world. The epigraph at the beginning of this chapter talks about the Moran.
Yes,
these are the allies of the Malazans. You don't really get much in the way of description of these guys, but they are then given what's called an hour of blood as part of their agreement with the Malazans. So they go in, and the Malazans sit back and watch while these guys do something atrocious to the inhabitants of the city. As part of some deal or some old beef they've got with the locals. It's pretty grim.
I think the chapter definitely, even more than the previous one, highlights just the sort of attitude towards war and just how grim the whole situation really is. There's a line when Whiskey Jack first meets Tattersail, and they're talking about all the men that they've lost, and she says, oh, "I'm so sorry. I'm sure the men that you lost, I'm sure they were good men," and he just says, "Good at dying." It's that's just the attitude. It's just the city's fallen, even though these people have gone through everything. These Marantha are still going to come in and kick the horse while it's down. For their hour of blood. It's brutal. brutal stuff.
Yeah, and I mean it is brutal, and there's this kind of battle that we don't really we just get sort of a brief moment of description where from Tattersal's point of view, where she seems to think that the magic that's taking out her mages and the soldiers around them is not coming from Moonspawn, but from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
the grassy knoll.
Yeah, it's suspicious. The idea is that it's not the enemy, but the gunman on the grassy knoll is taking him out. And it's
so I think she sort of alludes to that. What's his name?
Tasharin.
Yeah, I think she alludes to that he's definitely up to something.
Yeah.
So it's obviously small glimpses of, okay, maybe something isn't right.
Yeah. You know? And I mean, just the visual for me of I mean, he's firing all these mages are bombarding this big rock fortress above the city with magic, and bits of it are coming loose and like literally showering down and destroying the city as they do it. I mean, as you say, cinematic. I mean, if you were filming this as a movie, this would be if you were trying to film it like Gladiator, this would be your opening scene.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. Like I said, I think for me, it calmed down a bit. I could actually, make it through without having to bounce back and forth. I mean, it was a lot going on. Again, there's so much information, man. Just so much information.
But the thing that struck me
about note taking, were you still needing notes when you went through it now?
Not me. I don't take notes.
No, Ideal was the note man.
Yeah, I've been taking some notes, but maybe a bit less this chapter because I really got into it, and I think I was like it more than the first chapter, because I think the first chapter did feel a little bit more like hard work, right? I mean, I think in this one, with all the action, you kind of get swept up a little bit, and even though there were some big descriptions and other like scenes, there was actually quite a lot of the action. But I wanted to make a comment about that action because it just feels, even though, as you say, there's so much going on, and he describes in ways, what she sees or what's been going on, but it's you could miss quite easily. And I think the first time I read the chapter, I did miss a lot of the like what was actually happening with some of those forces below, and the fact that these things were really killing a whole lot of them, and that the stuff was falling on them, and he doesn't dwell on that at all. He just goes like, these bits and pieces fell off onto the people below. The end, moving on.
Yeah, you got to. That's the thing, though. You got to be so attentive, because I don't know if it's in this chapter. It might be chapter 3 when we get to that discussion. But there's like half sentences that you think, if you hadn't been paying attention, you would have skipped that, and you would have missed that connection. So there's no foreshadowing. There's no like signposts, riddle clues here. It's just like 4 words, and then you think, oh, hang on a minute, and you're going to go back and say, oh, okay,
oh wait,
that makes sense now. Like the Grey Eyes thing, I didn't pick up on.
No, it's one of those things I can only pick up because of hindsight. Honestly, I wouldn't look for it. But there's another one of those moments. I mean, and this is literally the 3rd time I've read this book, and I've never, to this day, I've never picked this up. And it's a quote. It's when at some point Tattersal's she's basically doing a sort of internal monologue, and she says something to the effect that. They mention that she's 219 years old. Just drops it off like, she's 219 years old. The Empire, if you look at those beginnings of those chapters, is half that age.
Yeah.
So she's
seen her fair share
double the age of the Empire.
Yeah. And yet she seems young.
Yeah, and yet she seems young, and
compared to the other people.
And she's got this quote, which I wrote down. Her older demons were back, laughing at the death of her illusions. You refused the deck once before. The night before Mock's throat was opened. The night before Dancer and the man who would one day rule an empire stole into your lover's hold. Now, I mean, I don't know if anyone would pick it up, but when the prologue started at a place called Mock's Hold.
Yeah. With the weather vane,
With a weather vane.
I picked that up.
And she's like, there's a history here. Like somebody called Dancer, and the man who would one day rule an empire stole into your master's hold, and they opened his throat. And here she is, effectively working for the empire.
Yeah.
But
100
years later, or whatever.
Yeah, but that also makes me think that then Mox has been attacked before, because then we join the book, it's being attacked by the emperor or the emperor.
No. We when it starts in the prologue, there's some witches, there's some other insurrection going on in one of the.
So in my mind's eye, it's obviously been attacked multiple times, and this was just the last. We join in the first, but they're mentioning maybe mentioning a previous attack, something. But the thing that got me was that deck of dragons. I thought is that in the second chapter?
It is.
That was cool.
She ends the chapter with a reading from the deck of dragons, which she seems to be an expert in.
Yeah, that was cool, because the line I'm referring to is she's sitting with puppet guy. What's his name?
Hairlock.
Hairlock. Yeah.
Hairlock Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Again, that just really pulled me, sucked me out of that.
Drop on the deck.
Yeah, I'm a real wizard. But then so she draws like the first card. I thought that was really cool. So she draws the first card. It's obviously like a fortune-telling device, but it's not, because there's obviously
something very different.
There's something far more powerful at play here. It's almost like, not even like a deck of many things. It's almost like this is what's going to happen to you. No ifs or buts about it. And the further you get into the deck, the worse or the better things could be. But you don't obviously want to risk it. So she just stops at the second card.
Yeah.
She talks about how he can't see. Was it the oolong or olong?
Pawn.
Yeah, with a coin.
Yeah.
She hears the coin spinning, and there's that line where I think she draws a card, something to do with the assassins. And then there's just that little line about the hounds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She says. Yeah. She draws. I mean, just for reference, Opon is one of the deities in the world. Opon is the multifaceted male-female god of chance.
Yeah.
I have this, and Opon is the spinning coin. That's represented by the spinning coin. But I always think of Steven Erikson. I know this is not true, but I always imagine that he's sitting there writing, and then he comes to what happens to characters, and he's got a coin in his hand, and he flips it to see the outcome and writes whatever.
Yeah.
That's how it feels when it comes to Opon to me. But I mean, it's not.
I like the fact that Pinocchio can't see and he can't hear, and she can clearly. So obviously, okay, so that's her intro. So she realizes something's up, and then there's definitely one of the cards that she draws that mentions Lord of Assassins, and then it's got that reference to the hound, and that just made for me that just like circle right back to chapter 1 when those hounds appear.
Well, you see, in chapter 1 we hear the hounds appear. The two characters arrive that possess
out of nowhere. Poof.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then the hounds destroy an entire military unit.
Yeah.
And
I enjoy that.
I mean, that's kind of at the end of the chapter, but just going back a little bit to when the battle is taking place. I mean, even before they find out that the guy in charge, there's only one guy at Moonspawn, and this is a guy called Anomander Rake, which they all know from some old poetry, and everybody thinks, oh shit, this guy, and it's like a real intro. He's like it's a real emo intro, it's him. Oh shit!
And then they have that tone where they're doing the one line at a time.
Yeah, and it's only like, oh god, we only bought 5 high mages, and now how are we going to beat this guy? It's quite a setup.
Yeah, it was cool. It was very very cool.
But I love the visual of the first salvo that gets fired at this thing, and then there's this just cloud of great ravens that kind of flies out of Moonspawn as it gets hit.
And they're huge. They said like a 12-foot wingspan.
Described as 15-foot wingspan or something.
Yeah, crazy.
Like little. I just love that visual for some reason. And then they see him standing atop their little figure, and he's like firing some kind of magic described as Kurald Galain, which is described as chaos, the Warren of Chaos. And they're fighting, and you got all these different colors of magic flying across the battlefield, and real sort of lasers and fireballs chapter.
But then after that, when when he's lying on the hill and they're trying to restore him.
Mm.
Well, you think they're trying to restore him, and they lay that sort of whatever it is, that implement on his chest.
Yeah.
And then he draws, like, his breath becomes weaker and weaker and weaker, and he draws his last wet, gurgling breath, whatever.
Yeah.
But then you get this impression that, like, Whiskey Jack, he just doesn't care. Like, he doesn't care that she's a high sorceress who's just smashed the crap out of this tower, battled other mages.
Yeah.
Like, these bridge burners just don't care. They're like
They're
jaded.
hard AF.
Yeah. They just don't care. They're like, oh, whatever. Like, we're the bridge burners. We don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that because there's no fear. There's not like, oh my god, it's a mage. Shh.
Yeah.
It's just don't care, man. We're doing what we're doing. And when she talks to them, like, they don't even take note that she's there. They just carry on talking, and then only after, when they finish what they needed to say to each other, do they then acknowledge the fact that she's there.
Is it this chapter when she senses the presence of a god on the hill with them? She says she senses the presence of a god, and then she assumes it's Hood. The god of death.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, everyone around her is dead.
But even Whiskey Jack says something like that as he's about to leave the field. I think he says something along the lines of, he should have left something for Hood's cup.
Yeah.
But didn't. And then it's cool. Yeah. There's a lot going on in chapter 2, but it does. Like I said before, I find it just becomes a bit more condensed, and it's a bit more of an A to Z. Even though it does pop around a bit, but it didn't feel quite as disjointed as the first one. I actually sat down, read the first 3 pages, and I thought, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
Really I definitely find I'm enjoying it a lot more than the first chapter. And it's something I almost wasn't prepared for. There's all this, like we were talking about last time, there's all this sort of, it's divisive and this, but I'm actually, like, enjoying it. And it's actually just like a fun read at some point. You got to just put all that stuff aside. And it
was one of those comments, though, from the first one that we did. I think the chap's name was Bob. I don't know if there was numbers at the end of it, and he was saying how he finds when he watches videos of this kind, it's almost as if it's got a bit of an elitist spin. Like, I've read Malazan, and a lot of people are put off by that. That whole why it's so divisive, and so But I think for me now, having read chapter 2 and chapter 3, it's starting to coalesce into a story now.
Yeah.
Sure, it's super interwoven, and as you say, things will only be revealed in 5 or 6 books down the line. But you can already see those, like, tiny, minute little threads are just starting to be tugged ever so slightly.
Yeah.
Which I quite enjoy.
It's very early in the piece, so it's a bit unfair to ask this question. But any favorite characters at this point? Standouts?
For me, I like Tattersall. I thought she was great. Again, I love the Gormenghast names. The names are just really cool, man. Like, you want to have, like, a D&D party, like dudes like this. You got, like, Mallet, and you've got, like, all these weird names. So I like Tattersall's cool. I think it's a great character. Whiskey Jack, dude. I really like him. I think he's cool. I like them. Those two. They're starting to feel like people, but I'm a bit hesitant to even start liking them.
No, I get you.
I fell in love with Ned Stark once, man. That didn't end.
We all got burnt once.
Yeah, we all got burnt once. Yeah, shame on me twice. So but those are my 2 standouts so far.
I think for me it would probably be Tattersall again. I think she's just, like, a super cool character, and like, pretty sort of, she's like, she has no illusions about what's going on, and she kind of says it like it is, which I like. And then another character that I just find sort of pretty entertaining is Topper. But
I think he's chapter 3,
yeah. He comes in later, but he's definitely a standout.
I also like him, but for all the wrong reasons.
I
think what I like about Tattersall is, sorry to cut you off, Adil. I think it's almost like she is us. I got the impression that's I think why I can relate to her, because she is, we're putting on her skin and we're walking around, and she's seeing a lot of this the same way we are as a new reader. I think that's maybe possibly why I relate to her a bit better.
And I guess her point of view dominated the chapter,
It
right?
did,
So,
yeah. It's about 80%, I think.
so you did feel like, as you say, you were walking around in her skin, and she was describing everything, and so we were going to feel a bit of a closeness to her, and I think that was definitely my feeling as well. Like I liked her as a character. I mean, we haven't seen that many characters in the chapter,
No.
so it was a difficult one. But I also just wanted to get back to one of the things you said, even in the first episode, though, Rob, was talking about the magic and how the different styles and flavors of magic were part of what drew you in, and I can see that starting in this chapter now, right? So even though they'd mentioned the Warrens before and how the different Warrens might have different sources, etc., I think you start to see it here, and I really liked how different the magics were, and like the point Al made earlier of Tadasel had this particular skill in that deck,
Yes.
and that is so even someone who's as sure of himself as Hairlock needed her for something. Like he couldn't do it all on his own.
He wasn't
because
as good, yeah.
Exactly, because in that particular area she had some skill.
Mm.
And I thought that was quite interesting, like that nobody is just all powerful. Like everybody has a little piece of it, which I thought was a great way to introduce the different kinds of magic.
It's a fascinating thing to me, and I like how the magic, it always feels slightly unknown. Whatever specialty a mage has, you never really feel like, oh well, this is how the system works. The whole idea of a magic system doesn't really seem to apply.
Because you don't get that. I mean, like in 99.9% of other fantasy books, the character will look at the mage and will go, "Oh, he's wearing a red robe. He must be he's a fire mage of Bernie Bum Bum."
The dreaded pyromancers of Thay.
Yeah, exactly. And then you look at them, the white mage. Oh, he's a healer from Saint Taragnus, or it's like, and it's black robes. He must be the necromancer.
Yes.
None of that, dude. It's like you don't even know what these guys are wearing. And in my mind's eye, they're all like wearing old, ripped, tattered robes and like poor man's pants that have been patched and patched and patched again. There's no opulence here. There's no massive staffs. There's no old worldy. It just feels like, I don't know, like really realistic. If you were in this world and you had all these powers, it doesn't seem that any luxury has been afforded these people. It's not like they travel around in carriages. No, they're on the battlefield in a tent, like amongst all the the legions about to go to war. They haven't been given special treatment.
And there are a couple of places where he also refers to what they look like. Right, and you could, and at one point you can tell that like Tetacel's are slightly bigger, and like I found that very interesting that they don't seem to pay that much attention to their own appearance, and that like with that kind of magic you would think that maybe they could like manipulate their appearance, but they don't seem interested in that at all.
Yeah, it is quite real in that sense. It hints on something as well, which is mentioned a lot. It might be a bit earlier in the piece to mention, but one thing about this world, and you get a sense of it with Tadasel, is that it's almost an entirely non-sexist world.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's not, nothing said about it. It's not overt in its ability to be non-sexist, but the authors are both anthropologists, and they take an anthropological view, and they say, in a world where people have magic, and anyone could have access to magic depending on their birth circumstances or some event or a study or whatever, that magic would be the deciding factor in terms of where you sit in a power hierarchy. And you wouldn't get sort of typical Middle European patriarchal hierarchies that would built up. So you wouldn't have any reason to create a sort of patriarchal society. And they put a lot of thought into it. It's quite interesting, like, because it's almost it's not commented on at all. It's just it is. It's quite refreshing, I think.
I think because it also alludes to when like the soldiers that you meet, like some of them are women.
Yes, absolutely.
And, but that also lends itself to the legions that I was mentioning earlier, because there's no way you could summon legions without having male and female, unless you're. And that's another thing. It's like, so how big is the Malazan Empire? I mean, if they're drawing legions of warriors, soldiers into these frays, and the way that they act about them, they don't seem to give a crap. they'll just send them forth, and if 100,000 people die, then so be it. We've got another 100,000 more. So it feels like there's almost a sense that there's more behind the scenes, just waiting to get chucked into the fray, and they're just going to keep on chucking into the fray until they win. So whoever's got the most combatants is going to, and mages left alive at the end of it are going to win.
And there was, to that point, there was also one mention of what seemed to be an undead army, right?
Okay, yes. Just a little throwaway line. The Empress Clanimas undead army. Yeah.
They travel
The
like
Chilan
dust on
Imas.
the wind or something.
Yeah.
So is there? I assume that it comes back at some point.
They're a central thing, but it's like, they just mentioned that these guys existed and the Emperor made use of them. Just historic, just from a contextual point of view, the Imas are basically the progenitors of the humans. So I think of them as like almost like Neanderthals to our modern day humans. They were the original sort of species that developed into humans. But probably not best to say anything more about the Imas because for future. But I mean, it's amazing. There's just a line dropped in there. He has an undead army, and they can appear like dust and disappear and just. Oh well, so what? Move on.
No further questions.
I don't even know if I'd have liked to have played in this guy's world. This is part of his campaign because it just sounds like you wouldn't even make it off the page.
Yeah.
Your first encounter, you'd just be obliterated. It just sounds terrifying. I'd be keen to see how they played it though.
Yeah, I would too. I would love to.
How did they? What sort of characters did they play? Obviously they wouldn't be super high-powered mages, but and obviously the politics plays a massive role as well. So.
I've heard them say that one of the things about playing in the GURP system that they did was that it was set up. You could come in at basically epic level, so you didn't have to start at level 1 and work your way up.
Okay.
There was rules for just jumping in at those sort of levels, and they often did. But the chapter ends with that. I mean, you were talking about it, Al. That the reading of the deck
and the coin.
And the coin, but it starts. I mean, her draw. I think she draws 2 cards. First is the Knight of High House Dark.
That's it.
So that's the first card that dominates the reading, and then she draws the second card, which is Upon, which is this twin deity of luck and misfortune, push and pull of being the two opposites, and then the spinning coin, which she decides not to tell Hairlock about.
And then she calls it there. Boom. She says, right, that's it.
That's
he gets annoyed with her.
Yeah.
Like, oh, draw on.
Draw another one. No. She says no.
Sorry for you. That ain't happening.
I'm still not entirely sure of how the deck of dragons works.
No, I was going to ask, but it's not explained. But it's something that she does once or twice. But when I was looking through the list of characters in the book, like one of the only things it says about her is like reader of the deck of dragons. So it's obviously a huge part of her character. And
you wonder, I mean, those dramatis personae, they've got one line for each character. And
and hers is reader of the deck of dragons.
How is that chosen? Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's important.
Yeah, you don't want to be the guy who gets killed on the second chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes it to chapter 3. Oh, sorry, chapter 2.
Half body removed by magical
something or other. Yeah, that was cool.
But anyway, I mean, I think unless you guys, you want any specific lines that stood out to you? Anything particular you want to mention about chapter 2?
Other than that line about, that line so far has stood out to me the most in the whole book is that, I'm sure they were good men. Yeah, good at dying. It really just says a lot without saying a whole lot.
Yeah. I particularly love the sort of troop, the soldier who says to you, always an even trade, sorceress. And then she describes in the battle how the troops are trying to get near her just to get protected from what's raining down, and she can't save them, and she feels like she's betrayed that oath almost.
Yeah, it feels almost like mechanized warfare.
Yeah.
It feels very similar to something that would have gone on in World War One. Just massive amounts of cannon fire, all sorts of shenanigans going on.
And just infantry just dying by the
Yeah,
droves.
by the droves. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
cannon fodder. Yeah.
Just briefly, on the there's a mention of the fact that several of the bridge burners are from a place called Seven Cities, particularly Quick Ben and Kalam, and they also mention Hairlock is from Seven Cities. The Seven Cities is another continent entirely that's already fallen under the Malazan boot. So like the Roman Empire, you get a lot of soldiers from those conquered places who then find their way into the conquering army at the end of the day.
But that's obviously why that mage had that plan with the bridge burners.
Oh yeah, because he's definitely in with them. They've got some,
or they're in with him, or one
or
of the
they're
two,
in with him, yeah,
or they're in it together. But
Yeah.
there's definitely some sort of
yeah.
It's great when he's lying there and he says, I've always got a back door. And she says, how are you going to crawl to it? And he's like, no, don't worry, the door comes to me, baby.
Yeah, but I mean,
Here they are now.
it doesn't sound like the most foolproof plan, I got to tell you.
Yeah, I'm actually wondering how powerful this dude is. But anyway,
Or he's just full of shit.
one of the two, yeah.
There was one.
Yeah, bro.
There was one line that I picked up on, which was, that he does a lot of jumping back. So he does like, thinking back on a particular point in time. But here he sort of foreshadowed something as well. So he said, in growing tension, they finished dressing in silence. Less than an hour later, Khaled would be incinerated beneath a wave of blue fire, and ravens would be answering Tattersail's despairing scream. So that kind of came out of nowhere for me. It was like they were talking about stuff, and then all of a sudden he just jumps forward, and you go like, where did especially because a lot of the stuff that he describes in just kind of these throwaway lines. It really stood out for me that now he was offering you something of like what's to come, and I thought that was an interesting way to do it, and I feel like I did miss that the first time I read it. I was kind of sort of going through fast, and then to Al's point earlier, like you miss a few words and you've missed a whole point.
I mean, but that's interesting because I love I actually didn't think about it much at the time, but I really think the way that this whole chapter is laid out as Tattersail's remembrance, if you get the instant reaction in the first bit, then she starts like we do in memory when we have trauma, as we then start to try and reconstruct the events that led up to the trauma, and she starts to go back to literally waking up in bed with Khaled, but her thoughts are continuously intruding, even though she's looking in the past about what's going to happen to the guy. So I think it's quite interesting storytelling from that sort of temporal jump that you're talking about.
But apparently, because one of the comment guys was saying how book one tends to be a bit scattershot, like all over the place, and then he also mentioned that book 2 and 3 and all that sort of calms down even further. So I'll be really interested to finish 1, because I think there was quite a lengthy period between books.
Yes.
Which maybe he wrote and re-edited and edited and wrote, whatever.
There was an interesting story there. He wrote book 1, got the publishing deal, sat down to write book 2 as a direct sequel to book 1, got 350 pages into the manuscript and then lost the entire thing and his backup, and then just couldn't bring himself to start that book again. So started another book, which is now book 2 in the series.
That's I wonder what God did that, man. The God of fell PCs.
Upon push and pull.
Upon push and pull, yeah. Good luck on book 1. Sucks to you for book 2.
Anyway, unless you guys would bring anything else in, I think maybe we can round off chapter 2 there.
That sounds good to me.
Maybe the spinning coin is a good way to end it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Good one. Cheers, guys.
Nailed it.